What is up, guys? Mike here, the Detroit Borg, and today I'm reviewing the cheapest smartphone I have ever reviewed. This is the BLU R1 HD sold by Amazon. So you can pick this up for $49.99 directly from Amazon, and there are two versions. There's the 8GB version with 1GB of RAM, a 16GB version with 2GB of RAM, which is only $10 more, and that is definitely the one you want to pick up. Now, in my case, we're taking a look at the cheapest version, which is 8GB of storage and 1GB of RAM. Now, the reason it's so cheap through Amazon is because Amazon has placed ads on this device. We're going to take a look at how this works. So in terms of the unboxing, the packaging is very colorful, but it's also very basic. So you can see all the stats along the back. You can see this is a 4G LTE phone, so this is compatible with GSM LTE networks like T-Mobile and AT&T. And it is also powered by Android 6.0, which is fairly close to stock Android. So opening up the box, first thing you'll see is the phone itself, which is wrapped in plastic. We can go ahead and slide it out. You can see the phone itself is fairly familiar for BLU fans. So if you're familiar with BLU devices, the design here is pretty consistent. It's very basic. There are no color options here, but it's an attractive phone overall, if not very interesting. In terms of the accessories, like most budget phones, there are no headphones, but we do get a power adapter in addition to a micro USB charging cable. And of course, we have some paperwork thrown into the bottom of the box. So getting to the phone itself, this is a dual SIM phone with a micro SD card slot, and you can access those by popping off the back cover, and they give you a little thumbnail port at the bottom in order to pry this off. So inside you'll find two micro SIM trays. So if you have a nano SIM, you'll have to use an adapter, and these trays are a little tricky to open. So basically the clasps lock in, so you have to push them down and pull them up, and then you can install your SIM and then lock them in place using those clasps. So next up, let's go ahead and boot up the device and get it set up. So in terms of the setup process, it's fairly stock Android, but of course we do have the Amazon sign-in screen. So you do need to sign in with your Amazon account in order to activate this, and this will log into your account and of course push the appropriate ads for your preferences. And of course it will also log you into all the other Amazon services that are available. They're also pushing an Audible subscription, so your first month is free, but it'll automatically charge you after the first month if you agree to this. So I'm just going to go ahead and skip this. So taking a close look at the hardware design, along the back we have that rubbery back panel, which does have a nice feel in the hand, so it feels nice and grippy. Of course, we also have our camera module, which does stick out quite a bit here. So this is an 8 megapixel sensor with an f2.0 aperture that records 1080p at 30 frames per second. And below that, we'll find an LED flash. Now, this camera is pretty basic, no optical image stabilization or anything like that, but we do have some interesting software features, which we'll take a look at. Toward the bottom, we'll find our rear-facing mono speaker, which does have this little bump above it. So when you lay this flat on the table, it doesn't muffle the speaker. Now, the speaker is definitely not very good. It's pretty quiet, a bit tinny, and generally speaking, that's what you expect with a budget smartphone. And because it's facing toward the back, it's actually pretty easy to accidentally muffle. So if you place your finger or your palm over it, you will mute it. So let's go and take a quick listen to how it sounds.
For $30 more, but the Moto G4 Plus gets a little extra, so you can upgrade that to 64 gigs of storage with 4 gigs of RAM. That's a $100 upgrade.
Now, along the sides of the phone, we'll actually find a metal frame, so it actually feels nice and sturdy and cool to the touch. But if you look toward the top, these pieces are actually plastic. So if you look closer, you can see there is a difference in terms of the color and the texture, but otherwise, from a distance, it doesn't really look like it's plastic. It actually looks like it's part of the metal frame. Now, because we have this metal frame along the side, if you look at the volume controls, we do have this metal recession around it, which is nice and polished, which looks a bit more premium than you expect on a phone of this price. Less premium is the port along the bottom, which is offset next to one of the microphones, and that is a micro USB port. There is no rapid charging built in here. Toward the top, you'll find another offset port, and that is your headphone jack. So along the front, you'll find a 5-inch 720p LCD IPS display, which is good for 294 pixels per inch. The display is extremely bright and vivid, and I'm actually surprised by how good this display looks on a budget phone. It looks great off access, and generally speaking, it's a fantastic display to use. It's covered with Corning Gorilla Glass 3, which is rounded off at the edges, which is another more premium phone touch, which is nice to see here. Along the very top edge, you'll find a 5 megapixel front-facing camera, also good for 1080p HD video, our earpiece, an LED notification light, and an LED flash for the front-facing camera. In terms of our specs, we have a familiar Mediatek MT6735 quad-core clocked at 1.3 GHz with a Mali T720 GPU. So this delivers pretty mild performance for our Geekbench scores. We see a single-core score of around 530, a multi-core score of around 1600. But the biggest spec issue here is going to be the 1 gig of RAM and the 8 gigs of storage. 1 gig of RAM is very tight, so you're going to see some performance constraints when you're running a lot of apps. So you'll see a lot of slowness, and things tend to bog down, and performance can definitely suffer the more you're using the the phone. So you really want to go for the 2 gig version, which will make a big difference in terms of performance. And since we have a lower resolution display with a lower end processor, battery life is actually pretty decent here. I'm getting about 5 hours of on-screen time set to maximum brightness. When it comes to storage, 8 gigs is simply not enough. You're going to run out of space. In fact, most of the space is already taken up before you start loading your own content. So in my case, I actually had to add an SD card in order to install a game to demo for the performance part of this video. And fortunately, with this phone, it does support adaptable storage, so you're able to expand storage after the fact, but at only $10, I think 16 gigs is definitely worth the upgrade. And when it comes to gaming performance, obviously you're going to be more restricted here, but most apps will load on this device, and although you won't see the smoothest performance, you're able to play most games pretty well. So when it comes to picture quality, 8 megapixels is not a lot of resolution, but images do come out clear and crisp in bright daylight conditions. The more light, the better the images will look. My only complaint really here is that the images lack color depth, so you don't see a lot of color information in your photographs, so things don't look very vivid. And the camera really brings up exposure, so it kind of flattens the image so you don't see a lot of shadow or bright spots. In terms of indoor low light conditions, it's actually not too bad, so you see a good amount of detail, but you do see plenty of noise because it brings up the sensitivity, but generally speaking, it's not too bad, and you can use the LED flash to help you out within close shots. But you can forget this camera in extremely low light conditions. Things look very blurry, grainy, noisy, and there's just not enough sensitivity for this camera to be effective in those conditions. In terms of video, we have 1080p at 30 frames per second, and the results are actually pretty good, although we do not have continuous autofocusing, so as you move the camera around, you'll have to tap the screen to refocus your shot, and it's fairly quick to do so. My biggest complaint here, however, is that exposure really jumps around abruptly, and it's quite noticeable. But otherwise, the video has the same characteristics of the still photographs. It's a little undersaturated with not a lot of color detail, but you have a good amount of exposure, which brings up all the detail.
What's up guys, Mike here, the Detroit Borg, testing out the front-facing camera of the BLU R1 HD. So this is a 5 megapixel camera, good for 1080p HD video. Not the best in terms of color, and it tends to be overexposed here, and also always looks a little blurry or smudged. I'm not sure why that is. But generally speaking, it's a decent camera for a phone of this price. So 1080p is fairly clear and good exposure, so you can at least see yourself, and it does have lots of features such as beauty face and other modes. So it's really decent for a camera at this price.
So when it comes to the software experience, this is Android 6.0 Marshmallow, but of course we do have some Amazon apps and advertising. That starts with the lock screen. So on the lock screen, if you have notifications up top, the advertisements from Amazon appear as a card down below. You can actually swipe to dismiss this if you don't want to see it. Of course, every time you lock or unlock the screen, you'll see a new advertisement. In fact, they refresh every time. So with these, you can double tap and launch right into that advertisement if you want to purchase this on Amazon. So again, it loads you into your account. Now, you do not see those advertisements within the drop-down notification shade, so that only appears on the lock screen. Now, if you clear out all of your notifications here, you will see that the advertisements fill the entire lock screen. So if you have no notifications on the lock screen currently, you'll see the full screen advertisement. And again, it can refresh every time you lock or unlock the device. Swiping to the right, you can see that they've also included this Amazon widget. So if you tap on this, this will expand out to recommendations based on your shopping history. So again, you're logged in with your Amazon account, so it's referring you to products that you may be interested in. Of course, I can collapse that or search or whatever I want to do with it, and I can remove this. So I'm not stuck with this on the home screen. I can take it up to remove to get rid of it entirely. Now, what you can't do is remove the advertisements on the lock screen, but you can install alternative lock screens, which will bypass that. Now, when it comes to the app selection, of course, we have lots of Amazon apps. We have Amazon.com, Amazon Video, Amazon Kindle. We have a folder full of some other Amazon apps like IMDb, Goodreads, Alexa, Prime Now, as well as Amazon Drive, Amazon Music, Amazon Photos, and Audible. Now, Prime Now basically is a same-day delivery service if that's available in your area. Now, the great thing here is that not all of these are installed. They're just links to the app, so you can install them if you want to. And you can remove these if you don't want them at all. In terms of the apps that BLU has included, we do have a file manager, so a pretty basic file manager, so you can see your file tree. And then we also have a video app, so if you want to see your videos, they'll load right here. In terms of the basic user interface, if we go to our drop-down notification shade, we can see our quick toggles up top, very close to stock Android. We do have our audio profiles here, which is a tweak that BLU has made. So we have silent, meeting, and outdoor. That's kind of nice to have. Of course, you have a flashlight, auto rotate, cast your screen, airplane mode, and that sort of thing. In terms of recent apps, we have a different style clear all button, but otherwise the interface is the same. Of course, we do have Google Now on tap in addition to just Google Now. What you can't do here is just swipe to the right to get to the Google Now launcher. If you tap and hold on the home screen, you get to your editor, which is a bit simpler here. So we have our wallpaper and our widgets. If we go to the wallpaper, you can see all the wallpapers that are available, and many of them are quite nice actually. When it comes to settings, also very close to stock Android with a few tweaks. So if you go to display, you can see reference to mirror vision, which is sort of a display driver software. So it's telling you that display picture quality is being enhanced with mirror vision. And because we have dual SIMs, we can manage those right here under settings. We also have an Amazon section under settings. So we can switch our accounts, or we can go to our account preferences, which unfortunately doesn't seem to be working right now. Another feature common to Blue phones under settings is scheduled power on and off. So if you want your phone to turn off overnight, you could set that up and limit to certain days. In terms of the camera app, there's quite a bit going on here. So right now I'm looking at the front-facing camera, which does have facial tracking. So it's able to track your face. You can snap your photograph, and it does have an LED flash up top, which you can turn off or set to auto if you want. And of course, you can also leave it on, which is kind of handy. We also have our mode selection. So we have normal, face, beauty. So this will soften the details of your face, and you can adjust that with these custom settings. We also have wide selfie, which is kind of a nice feature. So this allows you to take sort of a panorama using the selfie camera. So let me go ahead and show you how this works. Just start taking the photograph and pitch the phone left to right, and it'll automatically stitch the image together. And there you go. It doesn't look very good. It looks like it's a little blurry, so maybe I was a little too quick. We also have dual view, which will record both the front-facing and rear-facing camera. So you get a little thumbnail of the rear-facing camera, which you can resize and move around here. And you can change the outline as well. So you have this interface down here that allows you to change it. It is a little slow here as you select them. So you can see there is some performance constraints in terms of some of the software on this hardware. But generally speaking, it works fairly well. Taking a look at the front-facing camera, which is actually pretty decent. We do have a burst mode, which you can tap and hold on the shutter release to start. You can tap anywhere on the scene to adjust exposure and focus, and it does have an AF assist light using that LED flash, which is nice to have on a budget phone. You can also see your settings up top, which includes your smile shot, so it'll record your photograph when everybody's smiling. We also have zero shutter delay, which speeds up the shutter release, although that means sometimes your shot isn't entirely in focus. You have your picture guide, so you can turn on your grid lines, and we have some other settings here, such as the shutter sounds if you want to turn that off, your timer, your video quality, your picture size. So 6 megapixels at 16:9 is cropped from 8 megapixels at 4:3. We also have anti-flicker for 50 Hz or 60 Hz refresh rate. So if something is flickering like your LED lights or your display, you can modify that here. We also have our video, so we can start recording our video, snap a photograph, pause it, resume it, or just stop it. Of course, you do have zoom in and zoom out even while recording video. So if we start recording our video here, you can pinch in and out to adjust your zoom.
So ultimately, in the end, there is no denying this is a fantastic value, easily the best value in smartphones I've seen to date, but it really comes down to how much you want to sacrifice your principles for putting ads on your device to get that cost down. Now, for me, I actually don't find them very intrusive, so I don't mind them at all, especially since I always have notifications on my lock screen anyway, and the ad is very minimal. I can also dismiss the ads that Amazon has installed and forget they're even there. So generally speaking, I think this is a fantastic phone for $50 or $60, and I could definitely recommend it to a lot of people who are on a tight budget. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed this look at the Blue R1 HD. If you want to pick one of these up, I'll leave it linked in the description below. I think it's definitely worth taking a look at. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you again in the next video.